but my name is Mark Talaga. That's Andy Mahoney. We both work at the Center for Identity Potential, which Andy founded. The main practice is in Chicago, and I run the Detroit office. So I'm more local for you Michiganders. So our practice works primarily with the gifted and talented population and twice exceptional population. We work mainly with kids, though we do work with adults, parents, families, and have other services like executive function coaching, academic support, like things like moms groups, a lot of, we're a one-stop shop for all things related to the gifted population. What makes us different than most is we're big believers in assessment, because we believe that this is an extraordinarily complex population and that you can't do good work unless you really understand all the variables and all the complexity, and that's what we're trained to do. If it's of note to anybody, we are still accepting clients. We're just seeing them on Zoom now, which has been pretty effective, actually. And then, anything I'm missing there, Andy?
Oh, that's pretty good. Let's talk a little bit about stepping stones.
Yeah, so I got something to read here. This is being hosted by Stepping Stone as the SPARCler event, the parents events. We've been doing these monthly for some time now as a resource to parents. So I want to read a little bit about Keo Morse, the founder of Stepping Stone School for the Gifted Education. Has spent 40 years as its head of school training teachers to understand and teach gifted children. She has incorporated best practices in education and the psychology of the gifted child to develop and design an educational model for gifted students, young K through grade 8. The school strives to develop the whole gifted child as an individual with unique characteristics of intellectual, academic, and personal skills. In addition, Keo serves as an officer of the Michigan Association for Gifted Children, as well as the Association for Independent Michigan Schools. I want to thank you, Keo, for hosting us once again, and I'm going to turn it over to you to talk about whatever you'd like to talk about.
Okay, well, thank you. I really appreciate the two of you spending your time to come and help our parents out and any other parents who need to get some other information. The announcement that I wanted to make is that we are very excited to announce the launch of our very own blog. It is being called Dr. Reef's blog, Unclocking the Gifts. Dr. Reef, whom many of you know as Reef or Dr. Morse, has been teaching gifted children along with myself and many of our staff since 1981. We intend for this blog to be a great resource for parents, counselors, and other advocates for the gifted population, and to bring together the vast reservoir of knowledge and experience which our team has collected over the last 40 years. Our blog posts will include everything from interviews with other professionals to firsthand accounts from our staff and our students. It will also have the recordings of these SPARCler seminars, so we encourage everyone to sign up, which you can do at steppingstoneschool.org/blog signup. You could probably just go on our website and it would show you where to go. And I think that's the only announcement I really wanted to make. And so I'll turn it back to you guys.
Well, you know what I'm going to do? Thank you, Keo. I'm going to go ahead and take that, the link you just mentioned. I'll put it in the chat. So if people want to just have that access to that, then they can have it right now. Otherwise, yes, they can go to the website. Okay, there it is.
Perfect.
Cool. All right.
Okay.
Andy, you want to talk a little bit about a little bit more about who we are and why we chose this topic? Because this topic was supposed to be something different. We're supposed to be talking about, I think, career in the gifted.
Career, yeah. So what we thought we would do tonight is do a little continuation of our executive function workshop, try to tie that into what people are struggling with in terms of dealing with their home situation, the demands put on the parents in terms of education, what the parents are struggling with, really give people an opportunity to ask questions, and we're going to try to give as best practical advice as we can. And since we're working with lots of parents right now, we are getting a sense overall of what people are up against. I do want to acknowledge that there are a lot of people suffering, and the longer this goes, the more people are dealing with serious loss and anxiety and how they're going to survive, some people. So Mark and I tend to be comedians. We don't tend to be disrespectful though. So at times if we get, tell jokes or do whatever we like to do here, it's not out of disrespect. We're just trying to lighten the evening. And we do acknowledge that people are under an enormous amount of duress. And it's not going to get easier at the moment. I think it's going to get harder before it gets better. So with that in mind, if people have, we'd like to hear like a particular struggle question that we could respond to that we think a lot of people might be relating to.
Right. Our hope is that we're really attending to whatever you're going through in the moment, whatever's been coming up with you, because now everybody's in somewhat of a homeschool or online schooling situation. So you can put that in the chat if that works best. And you can either do that to me directly or just for everybody to see. It's up to you. And then we can kind of open it up, but we're hoping that we can really address specific issues that people have.
Do you get any questions?
Not yet, unless I'm missing.
You're the questions are.
Yeah, I'm looking. You're burning questions.
All right, well, while we're waiting for questions, I have some ideas here. One of the problems we're dealing with is people are feeling like caged rats. And there's a basic notion when someone feels like a caged rat. You have to have a sense of an out. You have to have some belief that there's an alternative for you from feeling like you're trapped in your situation, your environment, your thinking, whatever it is. So one of the things that I would recommend is that people work hard to find a way to plan something that your children and you have to look forward to. And my belief is under this kind of stress, there should always be one, two, or several things that you and your family have to look forward to. So you may be planning an outing, a picnic in the woods. You may be planning some kind of meeting with the family on Zoom. Whatever it is, there's got to be something on the horizon at all times. Because if there's nothing to look forward to, if there's nothing to pull you forward, it's going to be really hard to live in the moment. So that's one of my thoughts.
Yeah.
Ideas.
And as you're saying that, we also have a lot of questions coming in. Quite a few of them about screen time. And more specifically, somebody wrote sneaky screen time, which I actually really like. The idea of how are we dealing with sons and daughters sneaking screen time or sneaking video games instead of doing work online when in the chat room without having to hover over them.
So let's, so it's a lot of people are probably dealing with, they're sneaking screen time. Is that one of the issues?
I think it's somewhat in the context of, I think even while they're learning or on the Zoom and kind of slipping between, supposed to be learning and doing what they're doing to kind of just turning it into their own browsing screen time.
Okay, so let's look at the misuse of screen time as a symptom,
right,
of another problem here. So, Mark, what would your thinking be as one of the more core problems that's really going on as to why the child would want to escape into the screen?
Well, they're up against some level of challenge into what they are now dealing with as far as their new education structure. There's a challenge with how the structure is now, to where they're not able to sustain it on some level, and to abide by that new structure, and that leads them to this place of wanting to drift off and play games. That's what comes up for me.
So here's one of the dangers, because I just saw one of the texts pop up. If people try to address this too directly as it being the problem, they're not going to have a lot of success. They have to address what the child is really struggling with, that they are feeling the need to take advantage or to sedate themselves or escape into the screen time. So some of the undercurrent of that, one would have to do with the transition itself. So going from a day of schedule to no schedule to a whole new world of having to put together a structure in their life, that's very difficult for most people. So that alone is one issue. So for the child themselves, they're still making a transition from everything in their world changed, and as the parent, everything in your world has changed. And some people are caught up in thinking they can just transition right over into a whole new structure and try to replicate what was happening before. That's impossible. Not only is it impossible, it adds to the stress and anxiety. And so there's a transition going on here. And what I think in general happens is people don't realize how big the transition really is, what demand it puts on the prefrontal cortex in terms of executive functioning, organization, planning, all of those subfunctions. That's a huge demand. And to make that shift, a lot of people are thinking, I've got to make this shift. I've got to get them to learn. I've got to get them to do what the teacher's asking. I've got to replicate their day, keep them busy. No, it doesn't work that way. It really is going to have to probably start with a renegotiation and a realization of what everybody is really up against. And each child is going to struggle in their own way with that transition. There are going to be some kids it's not a problem for, because no two are alike. But for the vast amount of people, transitions like this are really difficult, particularly when there's this enormous emotional underlay that has to also get addressed in the process. That's a lot to chew on. Go ahead, Mark.
Right. Well, I
digest that for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is a very brand new way of learning, a brand new way of structure. And for gifted kids, that puts an enormous amount of taxing on the executive functions, which it sometimes are already taxed to begin with, even in a structured school day. And so there has to be some level of expectations that you're managing for yourself, for your kids, for the family, for the household, for everybody about what this is going to look like or what it needs to look like. Because it can't just be, this is school time, we do our work, you know what I mean? And the other thing that keeps coming up, I'm seeing, is a lot of parents are having a hard time knowing how much they should be doing as teacher or working alongside, or how much.
Let's just deal with that to start with.
Yeah.
Let's start with the parents' needs. For me right now, the parent needs to take care of themselves first. They need to reevaluate the priorities and what they're up against. Some parents are living on the edge, literally. They don't know how they're going to survive, if they're going to keep their jobs, if they're going to be able to take care of their family. And so if you're caught in a dilemma where you're trying to meet the expectations of a school system, while you're also trying to understand how you're going to take care of your family and your basic needs and survive, you're going to have to work on your prioritization. Because the priority for me has to be you as the parent taking care of you and your primary issues of taking care of your family, not education. That has to become secondary in this case. And so I'm seeing a lot of people struggle with this issue where they are flatlining everything as if everything has the same priority. No, it doesn't. So you yourself are the parent. You get to decide your value structure and how you're going to take care of you. So you can take care of your family and you can take care of your children. And if education is, where is that in the hierarchy? And when those priorities get clear, people start to get functional. The prefrontal cortex actually starts to work. If you're feeling stuck, overwhelmed by everything, it's because you're not prioritizing and setting your value structure in a way that's in alignment with your basic primary needs. And those needs have to be sorted out and assigned value and then you address them accordingly. Otherwise, your prefrontal cortex just shuts down. The stress gets worse.
Yeah, part of me wants to hear a response to that
Okay.
from a parent. If anybody's feeling particularly brave, maybe, I might ask that if somebody wants to talk about the idea of there has to be a reprioritization, that parents have to come forward, that you have to take care of yourself before you get into this. If not, that's okay, but I'm just curious to see how that's hitting people.
Did you get a volunteer?
Anybody volunteer for tribute?
Oh, there's
Kristen Cox.
somebody.
Thank you, Kristen. Oh, and then,
All right, let's allow her to,
all right, so let me,
I think you have to allow her to
yeah,
video to
give me
show.
just a second. You would think everything, where are you, Kristen? I don't see you on here. Oh, there you are. I got you.
Oh, wait.
There you go.
And I can,
I heard her. Go
Can you hear
ahead. Yeah, we hear you.
All right, there I am. Yeah, so we've definitely been having that issue with my 9-year-old because we limit screen time, and now they're expected to be on the screen all the time. I mean, I've just been trying to reprioritize it by, I changed my life situation. I actually moved to a different town for a while, so that we're more out in the country right now. I was lucky that I was able to do that. And I think I'm really grateful that I was able to give myself permission to do that, and not worry about it, and start to look at the other things that my son is learning, and also help him to understand that what the priority really is, because when he's an adult, when he's a parent, I would want him to prioritize taking care of the family beyond, just education. It's a different type of education.
wow.
Mark, did you go ahead, Mark?
No, I love that. I think I really enjoy, and I think that really takes the point home to how you put that into practice.
Yeah, so Kristen, you were able to make a big jump.
Yeah.
And you decided I have to change the whole environment in order to get clear about how I'm going to take care of myself, therefore to take care of my child.
Yeah.
And you're saying that had a big impact on you, correct?
Yeah. No, I mean, I feel much freer myself. I'm actually getting more of my own work done. I'm able to kind of create, I just did it a few days ago, so I haven't totally, because I think gifted kids especially, they do need structure, but what does that structure look like, and what are the requirements? They don't need to be what they necessarily were before, I think. And with kids who learn differently, I think there are some opportunities to kind of really start to think about how they're going to learn best, and then bring that back when they do get back in the classroom in terms of your understanding of how they learn.
Great.
Right.
Yeah, I like that.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank
And
you.
then there's another thing that keeps coming. I like what you guys are saying, put your own oxygen mask on before helping others. That's a good rule of thumb.
There's a lot of pressure not to do that though, Mark. A lot of parents are under this pressure. We had our moms group today, and a lot of the moms this is a pretty savvy group of moms, and they are very aware of how much external pressure moms of gifted kids get in particular, and dads, to really try to follow through with these external demands from the system.
Right.
When really they can't. They're exhausted. Their energy is drained, and they are in this dilemma about teaching or not teaching. And what I want to do is give permission to people to say, wait a minute here. Go to yourself and ask yourself, what are your real priorities? And in the greater scope of things, 2 or 3 months of not doing it the way it was always done, I can guarantee you is not going to damage your child.
I think this brings up a wonderful point because you're talking about the external pressures, and a couple questions are coming in regarding teachers in the schools because, teachers are a part of this, and teachers have a big role to play in this too. Parents can better prioritize if their child's classroom teacher is very flexible with assessments. So it's like, okay, well, what if the school and the parents, or I'm sorry, the school and the teachers rather, are saying, well, this needs to be done, and this is the expectation, and we're still doing grades, and
Well, I think then the parent has to be respectful of the fact that that teacher is being asked to do something that's unrealistic.
mm-hmm.
And they're just trying to do their job, and they're fearful about losing their job, really. And we have to step back and say, okay, just because the teacher says it has to get done, you as a parent have to ultimately make the decision, no, it's okay if my child doesn't do it, and I'm not going to get mad at the teacher. I'm going to accept the fact that the teacher is just doing their job. Because there's an article just came out like yesterday or the day before where a lot of school districts are realizing this is not working and they're shutting it off because they realize it's too much stress. There's not enough structure and not enough formula to how to do it right. And I think they're realizing what I'm talking about. People are overwhelmed with other issues and that this has to take a back seat at some level. So for me, it's having compassion for the teachers, what they're up against. Now, if you take a school like Keogh's, it's a small school, they can handle that stuff. They have a relationship, it's small enough. They can negotiate those things differently. But if you're a teacher, you have a kid in a gifted district, it's a big district and they have a bureaucracy they're living within. And I can assure you those teachers are afraid of losing their jobs right now because of cutbacks and all kinds of things.
What would you say to a parent who's saying, well, my school is almost doing the opposite. They're not giving much of anything. They're just posting some exercises to do online. My child is bored. He's not very engaged or she's not very engaged.
I say, you got to understand what the teacher or this district is up against. You got to have you can't apply the same expectation set you would on gifted education right now. If this was, it's not, you can't do that with people. You can't apply expectation sets to a system that no longer exists, literally. There's no rule book here. This is totally new. And there's got to be a window there for people. And that's a situation where you probably have to pick, if you want your child to be challenged in that way and you don't have the stress that a lot of people have and you have the luxury, fine. There's lots of great online things that you can pull up. There's lots of Gifted Homeschooling Forum is a great place to look. There's all kinds of homeschooling things that you could engage in. But to expect it from a teacher right now without understanding what's really behind that dynamic, if you're going to criticize it, I want to make sure you understand what's really going on there behind the scenes.
Right. I like Emily's. She's got a joke question, but I think it's a question. So basically, you're saying Minecraft for 8 hours is okay. No. It's not the black or white. It's
no. I'll tell you what, though. What's okay is what typically happens is this. This is one of those situations where the parent or the parents have to sit down first themselves,
Right.
And then you have to decide, okay, we have to renegotiate the family contract. We literally have to renegotiate the way we're living our lives. We have to understand what is our priority, what are our resources, where is everybody at emotionally, and prioritize things. And then you sit down with the children and you say, look, things have changed. We have to do things differently. So we have to figure out a way that we're going to take care of things that are important. And then we're going to rebuild our structure into our life. But if you think you're going to sit down and just throw a whole bunch of structure back into that child's life, or even if they're highly functioning people, good luck. It is not going to work because this problem has a far bigger impact than people know. There's too much transition at once. So we've got to have a window there for the transition. And then we got to have a new plan, you know, a new order of how the family's going to function. And it's got to be led by the parents. And the children are going to be put in a situation where they're going to have to work with the parents and come together as a family and collectively, you know, follow through. It's not going to be easy. We know that. We're seeing it already in our clients, right?
Right. I'm wondering if you want to spend some more time talking about the idea of family contracts.
Well, in a family contract, in a general sense, they're very complex. They have a lot of structure around how children earn privilege. When I'm talking about a contract right now, though, I'm not talking about, don't just jump in and do a major contract in that sense. You know, there's a great little book out there, it's been out there, it's called The Family Contract. I'm not telling you to do that right now. What I'm telling you to do is evaluate your situation, get some sense of control over the priorities, and then work with your children in terms of reintroducing a new line of structure for your life. Because what we're knowing right now about people are having malaise, they're getting depressed, they're shutting down, they only have so much energy, and they're trying to function at their normal rate. And again, there is a portion of the population that can do that. But most people cannot do that under these circumstances. There's got to be, there's probably going to be more screen time than normal, you know, for some kids, because they need an escape. I'm not saying it has to stay that way. What I'm asking people to is to do an evaluation, their own kind of, you know, a reconciliation over the reality of what each family member is up against, because every one of them will deal with it differently. And everybody's going through a process right now. So a lot of what you're seeing are stages in a process.
Yeah. I like that. So what are some of the stages in that process? Where could some people be? I kind of want to explore that a little more.
Well, what's fascinating to me about this whole process thing is I have my own schemas around processes. And so I look at the collective and I look at the individuals and I think about what they're presenting in terms of the symptoms they're struggling with. And then I try to align that with what I know about, you know, grief processes, change processes. And I try to see it from the perspective of, okay, right now the child is bargaining or the family's bargaining, right? Mm-hmm. Well, but the reality is so many people are getting affected at different points so that we're activating processes of long processes. So it's really hard to just look at this whole thing and say, this is the process and these are the stages. It's not going to work that way, because you and I know I was aware of this process differently than you are. I mean, remember when it started, you wanted me to negotiate a new lease for the business and expand. And I'm like, I don't think we can do that right now.
Yeah.
And then a week later, you're like, oh my God, Andy, this is another reality, right?
Right.
So we were in different stages, but I'm somebody who's lived through a lot of things.
Right.
So this to me, I get it at some level, probably better than most, but a lot of people haven't been through, you know, I've been through 2 major hurricanes in my life. I've been through the AIDS crisis. I was there at Ebola next to the monkey building when it happened. I mean, I can go on. I was near 3 Mile Island, you know, I'm kind of used to this, but most people aren't used to this. And even I'm affected by it.
Right.
You know, and I'm not overworking right now.
Yeah.
I realize I only have so much energy. It's because I'm adjusting to the change.
And for a child who is maybe stuck in this mindset of, I need to be getting my work done. I'm not doing it. I'm struggling to do it. It's painful to do it, but they can't how do you work?
Adjustment.
What's that?
You have to help them adjust for the variance of what's happening. So you have to do some rationalization with them about their expectation set and help them understand the magnitude of change and the loss of structure. They don't have their regular support systems. They don't have their friends in proximity. They don't have what they had that they were using to sustain the workload and the demands they had. You know, it wasn't just that they had work, you know, those, you know, as an Adlerian, you know that there's an interplay between leisure, work, and relationships.
Right.
And they have to work together at some level in order for human beings to be functional. Well, we've disrupted all three of those.
Right.
And children are far more vulnerable. But right now the parents aren't even taken care of in that regard. And so a lot of times the kids are acting out some of the parents' stress, by the way.
Right.
I don't know if I answered your question, though.
Well, you did, and I'm more trying to weave in the questions that are coming in through the chat, but I believe that was answered on some level. Really, you know, I get a sense that parents want to feel, they're struggling between this idea of feeling like screen time is okay to fill in the gaps because we're trying to create this new normal and we have to be more flexible and we have to be able to take care of ourselves and our jobs. And that's what the kids want to do. And that's where they seem happy versus, are we going off a cliff and never going to be able to come back because we've allowed it to be this way? You know, so I think I know what you're going to say to that, but I want to put that out there as the dilemma on some level.
Going off the cliff or the other part? Not going off the cliff. I don't.
Well, meaning like, okay, we allow screen time to be just part of our structure because that's just what we need in order to get through the day, or I need it as a parent to get through the day. But if things come back to normal, or summer now comes in and school isn't even around anymore, is it now this, like, we can't pull them back, screens are so ingrained in them, you know, that they can't come back from it? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think, again, you've got to think through this as a parent and say, okay, if I'm easing up on the screen time right now, I need to also let them know that as we get into some level of functioning again, with some level of structure, that's going to change. That it's not going to just be right now. We've eased up a lot of things for a lot of reasons, a lot of good reasons, but down the road, you've got to reinstitute structure. My thing is, just don't try to do that yesterday. You know, it's just not going to be helpful. And, you know, you have to, there's an unknown to this. We can have hope that, yes, we'll get through it. We usually do, right? Mm-hmm. You can protect children some from the reality of how difficult it is, because some children need to be protected. They don't need to have all that information. They don't need to know the utter dire consequences depending on where they are and what they're about. But some parents don't understand that either. They think that the child should know everything, and they just expose the child to no, you can't do that either. You know, and the kids are all different ages, and different kids have different realities that they can handle. And you got to know your child, you know, in that sense. Mm-hmm. So there is a level of protection for certain children, that they need to hear from their parents, that the parents are taking care of things. That what typically we do in a regular family dynamic is we help the parents let the children know what the parent's responsibility is and what the child's responsibility is.
Right.
And we don't let the child take the parent's responsibility.
We don't let the parents take the child's responsibility.
Well, we don't let the child take the parent's responsibility either, right?
Both, right. Gotcha. So there's the emotional component. I want to make sure that I'm addressing a need that's actually out there.
Okay.
Are there any parents out there concerned from a social aspect or connection to friends, or has that shifted at all? Or is there a symptom that comes up with your kid and how they're interacting or not interacting with friends? And if you wouldn't mind sharing or putting it in the form of a question, that'd be helpful. Codependent. My son's become codependent with his brother. Somebody just says yes. Refusing to do anything on his own. That's the codependence piece.
He's scared.
My son is really missing his friends.
They're missing their friends for sure. And it's important that they talk about that. And it's important that they connect to the friend and tell the friend they're missing their friends. Even if it's an email, a text, a phone call. So if you know the child is feeling a sense that, you know, they're not expressing it, but they're missing their friends, then you have to help them connect to those friends. They will feel better. It can be as simple as a text even.
So having the child express those emotions, but express that to their friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Encourage them to do that. Now, they may be afraid to do that.
Right.
Right? It's because they're overwhelmed emotionally. It's not because they don't want to. It's that they can't deal with that level of emotional authenticity that they're experiencing deep inside themselves about missing their friends. So some kids won't look like they're missing their friends, but if you know your kid well enough, you'll watch their behavior and you'll know, I know what's going on here. He's missing his friends. That's why he's acting that way, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then you'll have the opposite reaction, or the other extreme, where they're almost hysterical about missing their friends, but they're not doing anything about it.
Right.
It's the same thing. It's just different forms of expression. But the first thing you do is acknowledge it. And they might disagree with you. Doesn't matter. You say, you know what I think? I think you're missing your friends. How about if we call them? And they'll go, blah, 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 and say, that's okay, I'll come back to you later. And you go back later, and you may find out that they already called them.
Yeah.
Like that. Somebody writing letters. I love the old
I know.
fashioned.
I like the letter writing one too. That one jumped out.
That's really good because you know why? It's tangible. And this is a time, it's interesting, when people are feeling such a loss of control, and typically they're all heady, you know, so many gifted people are up in their heads all the time. Not everyone, but a lot of them. So doing something tangible is really effective. You know, they say if you can't sleep at night, get up and fold clothes. You know, it works.
Yeah.
But it's kind of the same thing. You have to do something to give you a sense of control over where you're feeling a loss of control. And a tangible thing is great. Like the other day, I didn't know what to do. I saw people were putting hearts in the windows, right? Kids were making hearts for the delivery people and the first responders. And I was thinking, you know what? Oh man, I want to put a heart in the window. And I just like, I was obsessed. I was like, I'm going to find a heart. And then I find this huge heart. And then I actually had a huge heart. Mm-hmm. And I put it upstairs in the window over the front door. And I'm sure, and the delivery people go by all day long. So hopefully they see it, right? And then I felt better. It's like, oh, that makes me feel better.
Would you, now, this is going to address one of the other questions I was reading. It's about, okay, let's say a child is very scared of the virus and the situation itself, and they have a lot of fear around that. And again, that goes to what you're saying is, well, it's a feeling of loss of control, so they're trying to control it by almost obsessing over it on some level. Is it the same thing? Make something tangible, put a heart in the window? Yeah.
You have to give them, but see what's happening in that case a lot of times is a symptom to they're not expressing their pain and their hurt and their fear. So they're getting into that obsessive kind of anxiety stuff when what's underneath that is the need to really help them express the real feelings. Those aren't really feelings. They're exaggerations, they're anxiety responses, they're thinking, they can be bordering on hysteria in a sense.
Right.
What's under that, when it's not rational at that point, that's where you have to realize my child is not expressing their pain.
Right. So,
and if they can't, you have to express it with them. You have to say, look, I think you're doing this because deep down inside you're hurting and you're feeling like there's nothing you can do. And you acknowledge that pain at a deep level. And then you can get them back down in a way that they're going to connect with you more. And then you can logically start to plan and structure and help them do something to get a sense of control, right?
I think that goes down to this last one is, I've suggested the hearts and the letters to my kids, but Minecraft always seems to win. It's so hard to find things she's interested in. And I don't think it's a matter of interest. I think it's a matter of the difficulty of what's really going
Okay,
on.
let's have this Minecraft thing. This I'm not going to let a computer game control me, right? There's no way I'm going to let a computer game control me. You know, for some reason, I believe that that child needs something, and that the reason they're escaping into that computer game is because they're not getting something they need. And so we got to figure out what is it that they need.
Yeah, and it's funny. With a lot of the kids that I work with, a lot of them have said to me, when we really get down to it, when we really express what they're not getting and what they need, it's almost always to spend more time with family, which is interesting. It's very much like, I wish we played more games together.
Well, I was thinking, why does it this person needs to go sit with their kid for 8 hours and play Minecraft and see what happens?
Yeah.
Say, sure, you can play Minecraft, but I'm going to play it with you.
Yeah.
Teach me how to play it,
yeah,
right?
Just bring your own Mountain Dew bottle.
Oh, and someone wrote this, but don't we all want to escape right now to some degree? Yes, we do.
Right.
And you know what? It goes back to what I started with. You're feeling like a caged rat, you need to have an out. Now, an out could be as simple as something you're going to do when this is over. Something you put all your creative energy into. When this is over, I'm going to do this. And you start doing the research and you start gathering the resources and the information. I'm telling you, that works. Because if you're feeling like a caged rat, after I went through 9/11, I said to my husband, if you don't get me out of here, I'm going to die. I was having panic attacks. It was unreal. So what we decided to do was we bought a home 140 miles away. And my anxiety went away, and eventually I moved away because I needed an out. And that's the kind of thing people are experiencing right now. They're feeling trapped in this anxiety and this fear. And the only way out is you've got to go forward, put something on the table, and make it important to you, and then work towards it. Now, it doesn't mean you're going to get it tomorrow, but you've got to be able to set a goal, an idea, a desire to help you escape.
Right. So
caged rat just gets nastier and nastier. They'll bite you.
There was something, is it the right time to tell our students how this virus will change the world? What industries will be decimated or will thrive? How will this accelerate our reliance on IT and AI? How will this virus come in waves? Like the Spanish flu, what school could look like next year?
Well, I have an interesting gifted idea.
Yeah. Oh, a gifted one. Oh.
Well, this is what I do in business, is what I've been doing with some of my clients. So what's happening right now is, like a lot of people in business, they don't know how this is going to turn out. I said, well, what you do then is you start processing the information in your industry, what people are saying, what they're doing, any idea you get, any idea anybody else is putting out there. You go into the literature, you start to gather what people are saying, and you organize that information. And what it does is you process it into your long-term memory, and then your working memory starts to build a schema. It starts to build a creative process. And that's how people do trending, by the way. So people do forecasting that way. They process high levels of information while they're occurring. They don't try to forecast something without data. So if nobody really knows, but the child could be creative and say, well, I see this happening, I see that happening, and they could also decide, what do they want to have happen after this? They don't have to be dependent on what the world says it's going to be. How do they want to change the world? I want to know how they want to change the world, really. What are they learning from it that they think should be different, or what they can create out of the experience?
And it very much depends on the kid and where that kid is at, and that may be helpful, and that you may be picking up on that's something that they could use to have that focus on processing massive amount of information and seeing what they think might happen. And yeah, for sure. Right. So yeah, it's not a blanket thing that it should be for everybody or for nobody, but I think it's very context specific.
What is about the age? Keo's asking about the age. We can't address every age right now, right? But the reality is it is about the age. But again, with the gifted, they're all at different ages, at different stages and ages. It's all over the place.
Right.
That's where you have to adjust your awareness level around development.
There's something, I wanted to go back to something because there was a good question. How do we know when they are overwhelmed with emotion and when they're simply trying to manipulate the situation?
It can be both.
That's what I was going to say.
I think most manipulation is tied to something that the person wants and they don't know how to get it. So if they're manipulating in a negative way, you got to say, okay, let me help them get what they really want. So they don't have to manipulate it in a negative way. Or let me help them use their manipulation in a constructive way. Okay, you want to manipulate to get what you want? Let's really learn how to use your manipulation skills in a productive, safe, ethical way,
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't want some kid who's manipulating to think that their nature in terms of how they manipulate is a bad thing. It's an ability. It's a high level ability for a lot of them. And it's ultimately what they grow into as adults and learn to use for good, hopefully not evil, right?
Hopefully.
Most days I do.
Right. Uh-huh. I think we're going to get a lot of parents into Minecraft with this. That's the gist I'm getting here.
How do we
They're all going to
that?
get right
What's
next to
that?
their kids. Uh-huh.
Your gifted children tend to.
Let's see. Heather, I'm not sure how do we do that, what that's in reference to.
That was interesting. Keo wrote something about they tend to imagine the worst. That actually is a symptom of another issue, but in a general sense, if a child is doing that all the time, there's something wrong. So that has to be evaluated. If a child is always going to the worst case scenario, that's a symptom of some kind of underlying stressor about mastery, skill development, self-efficacy. Those things are all going on for that child. Now, imagining the worst isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's the context, right? So we don't want to tell the child, stop imagining the worst. We want to understand, wow, this kid really imagines the worst. What's going on here? And how are we going to use that as raw potential and develop that for the child? And then get them to use, figure out what's going on with their reasoning skills and how they're evaluating situations. That's what's underneath it.
Mm-hmm.
Did I answer that okay? I don't know.
I think so.
Oh.
She clarified just in that situation, but I think that was still helpful.
Good.
The getting kids to manipulate effectively. I like the idea of using their manipulation to help people donate money to something. I don't know. That's just what came up for me, but I don't know. So I was just at the end. I needed to give blood. How much blood was too much to give and needed facts, like Keo said just a minute. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, what was that last? I didn't see it.
I kind of mumbled it. My son was just at the ER and needed to give blood. He didn't know how much blood was too much to give away, and he needed facts. So like Keo said, just a minimal answer. Right, yeah.
Yeah.
The facts can be very soothing.
Oh, totally. Yeah, that's, in the old days, they used to tell you when you go to the doctor, they're going to give you a shot or do a procedure and say, don't worry, it's not really going to hurt. They don't do that anymore. They learn that that's really not appropriate. When you're giving somebody a shot or you're doing a procedure and there's going to be pain, the doctors and nurses today will tell you, and they should tell you, and they should be realistic with you, and then they should talk to you about how you're going to manage that pain or deal with that pain, not pretend you're not going to, it's the same thing.
I like this next one. How do we get kids engaged in a creative activity? I have a lot more free time now and have started a few art projects, trying hard to engage my son, but there's no interest.
Go ahead, Mark. That one's
Oh, I was
yours.
going to put it to you.
No, you
artist.
have to answer it.
Uh-huh.
I'm the artist, but there's so
Well,
much good stuff out there on creativity.
yeah. And I don't know. To me, it's kind of going back to the
It's
drawing.
initiation. It's an
Yeah.
initiation problem. It's
Right.
not that they don't want to do it. They don't have it's a little more complicated.
Well,
But
I think there's like you're trying to get the buy-in first, and then you're going to make it happen, rather than this is what's happening, and then once they
Yeah.
see that they're in it, then they're doing it, and all of a sudden that's not so bad. It's more about look, it can't just be online stuff all day long. It just can't be. Not in this household. That's not how, I understand you need an escape. I understand you need a break. But on some level, here's what we're going to be doing. And try again on some level. But yeah, I think you're in the right place, but it's tricky. Let's see.
some of these statements are really cool, but I can't.
I know. What was this last one here?
Well, if you think of it this way, well, there's so much in that. I wish I could answer it. We don't really have enough time, but it is a this is back in the day when people used finger painting for a reason. There was a reason we did finger painting in kindergarten.
Right.
It's still a good technique for people who need to be less rigidly inflexible, right? There's a rigid inflexibility they're talking about where the child won't do something. And some of it has to do with you're going to have to do it with them, or you're going to have to change the environment. There's a lot of stuff in that. I would like to answer it, but I'm afraid I'll go off on a
Well, I
diatribe.
also like what's happening in the chat, because a lot of people are reaching out and giving ideas and saying,
Well, that's good.
What could work? There's a part of like affiliating with others to figure it out, because it isn't easy, and sometimes
There's also an issue here with dependency that people are reflecting on. So much of our culture is based on other people are going to tell us how to do it or what to do. And right now, those structures are gone. And so what's the wonderful thing about this is, no, people are going to have to learn how to be self-reliant, self-engaged, self-initiating, and take responsibility for their existence in this world. And that's a big shift, because a lot of people are used to here's what you're supposed to do and do it.
Right.
And sorry, some of that tension needs to be left on the child. Yeah, I know you're going to say you're bored for 3 weeks, and then one day you'll get it.
Right.
Eventually they'll do something. I'm trying to be a little extreme here, but
I like it. Well, I'm relating it to my own life right now. I like what Emily's saying here. There's no closure and no way to prepare for next year or wrap up this year for school.
No, but you can do scenarios. And
Right.
what people do when they are in war rooms and dealing with big problems where they can't control the outcomes, they do scenarios. If this happens, then we're going to do this. If that happens, then we're going to do this. So you can plot out. Again, you can do trending. You can start gathering data. And then you can have different schemas set up, different plans. If this happens, we're going to do this, so that you have some kind of framework. And by the way, that lowers anxiety. So it's not going to be like knowing exactly, but let's lay out the scenarios, right? That'll lower the anxiety. People do that in industry all the time. They do it in marketing rooms. They do it in all kinds of product development.
Right. So the idea of, okay, I like that. But again, it's about taking responsibility for that, and it's not going to be handed to you, and we have to work through it together.
And these are some of the tough things, that we're facing right now, that they're all opportunities. The other thing that we have to keep in mind is that there are so many other people suffering, and I think that as parents, you got to keep that in mind and keep your priorities straight, And when your kids are acting a little too entitled, then you're going to have to deal with that, because this is a great opportunity to make a lot of good shifts in how we look at the world and how we understand how people suffer. This is the first time in our consciousness that we have something that affects all human beings. This isn't like when I, went through 9/11, where everybody was affected, but not everybody was affected in a certain way, and not all over the world in a sense, or like when you deal with, other big events, it's usually an isolated group or a certain portion of the population. And you can kind of feel some separate, this you can't get away from. Every human being is dealing with it. It's an amazing opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
There's no room for ego right now, folks. There's no room. Ego's gone. That's what everybody's dealing with. How do we deal with ego?
I like that.
We're going to have to wrap up here in a few
I was
minutes.
just going to say,
but go ahead.
It's probably a good place to even wrap up. If there are any, do you want to set aside a little time for any other questions? Or?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so yeah, I'll see if we can get a couple more in. I think that'd be great. Otherwise,
or people could share something they got out of this. I don't know. That'd be nice too.
Yeah, maybe that's what we'll do. Just to be conscious of everyone's time. How about this? If you would like to share something you got out of it, it has to be positive, nothing negative, nothing critical. We just can't handle that right now. But something that you got out of it, something that you became aware of or was helpful to you, that would be wonderful to share. And hopefully other people are feeling that as well. So if you'd like to, you can just send a message and then I'll allow you to come on and say it. So it's okay if you don't. But that helps us kind of wrap up and have some closure as well. And we will share contact info. Oh, look at all this.
Can I would just like, this is Keto.
Yeah, one second.
Yeah,
Let me get you.
I would just like to say that I think the important message, can you hear me?
I can, but I want to make sure people can see.
I think the important message that I'm getting out of what you're saying is that you need to be a little flexible right now. Like, we are assigning assignments, but we're not like getting upset if they don't make it, if they don't get it done on time the way they would at school. Because, as you say, they do need to take care of the emotional needs that they have. And the other thing is that I really like the fact that they need to, not like that, but I think it's important to limit the amount of information that you give a kid. It's like answering questions about sex. You give them the direct answer that is kind of like the least amount to satisfy them, and you don't go into all of those other details because that's not what they really need.
Well, and Kia, you're talking in general, and that would vary based on the child, right?
Right.
Because some gifted children can need more information, can process information, but that gets back to the whole issue of, do you really know your child and their vulnerabilities?
Yeah, but if they want more information, they'll ask for it. My daughter explored death for 3 months one year, and when I thought she was finally done, she came back to it about a year later, but at a different level. So it's not that you're not going to, I mean, you have to answer them, I think, truthfully, but you don't have to add stuff that they don't ask about.
Yeah, I like your point about flexibility too.
Thank you. These are really nice comments, by the way, everybody's sharing. Thank you very much. It's really nice.
Anybody have a last question or anything, or
I don't think so. I think we're wrapped up.
Got it all?
Um,
Mark, let's play some Minecraft tonight. I think I need to understand this game better.
I want to share a little bit because I run a young men's group, late teens, early 20s. And they just met each other and they're all kind of feeling it out. But one of them wants to, he's like, I just started Minecraft server. I was just wondering if it's okay to invite everybody. And he's going to invite everybody. It's just such a sweet thing. I don't know. It's really nice. So I think there's, positivity in it.
So why don't you say something nice to Keo about having us tonight?
Yeah, thank you. That's the next thing. No, really, thank you, Keo and Stepping Stone, for hosting
And
this.
everybody else. We had a nice crowd.
Yeah, really wonderful that this is being hosted. Thank you for having us. And, you know, on a personal note, Stepping Stone really is a wonderful place that really gets a lot of what we're talking about and puts it into practice. And I think the parents would agree, and the students would agree on that as well. So thank you to Keo. Thank you to Genevieve as well for helping with the marketing on all this. We hope to continue to do these. Is this the last one? Somebody's asking that.
I think it's the last one for this year. And then we're working on next year's schedule.
Oh,
but
okay.
you two guys have been really invaluable because there aren't that many psychologists who approach these issues the way you do.
That's for sure.
Which is practical and real.
We try. But so what we'll do is at our next talk, we'll go back to a more typical kind of talk, just to take people's minds a little further away from all this stuff, and we can get back into some normal kind of presentation.
Exactly.
And if anybody needs us, let us know. And Mark actually just started that group online, which I was so impressed. It's a great group of guys. So, you know, we could start some groups online. And we're going to start a mom's group, dad's group, whatever, parent group. Typically the moms come, but the dads can come. So we're in the process of starting one of those in the Detroit area, but you don't have to necessarily, it's going to be online. So people could come.
Great. All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and end this meeting, but I want to say thank you to everybody.
Yes. Thanks everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.